I work for Cluster HQ, who a few people have assured me they've heard of. I look after the user experience of our products. I can now say products, we're just about to launch a couple of extra products into Flocker. Can I ask, is anybody familiar with Flocker, our product? Familiar with Docker? Docker? Yeah, okay. So Flocker is a tool for managing state in Docker containers. So you can take down containers and create them somewhere else, and Flocker will manage migrating any data that you have, even if it's across nodes or something like that. So it's an open source product, and one of the things that is a challenge for open source products is understanding what your users are actually doing, because obviously you, as an open source product user, you can just go and get the product and do whatever you want with it, and you have to tell anybody. You can be completely anonymous, and you can just download it. So here is our invisible man, or woman, because they're invisible, you can't tell it. So yeah, we don't know who they are. We might. I mean, some people come and talk to us. Of course, we know we have some users, and we see that stuff gets downloaded, and people go to the website. So you know, things are good. We don't know how good. We don't know if people are really just coming to the website and going, oh, I don't understand it, and going away again, or downloading it and not using it. So it's actually really difficult. So we don't have a traditional sales pipeline where we can say, oh, we have these people kind of interested, and then we gradually get them to the point where they sign a contract. So what I wanted to do is kind of think around the problem and see if we could use some of the data that we already had to understand what the user's behaviour is, and take appropriate action to try and support them when they're coming to understand about our product, and hopefully getting closer and closer to the point where they might actually want to use it. So just to kind of illustrate how this feels to be to have an open source product, I can not take the opportunity to show this amazing video from The Onion. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Apologise if any adverts pop up.
In Modesto, California today, crowds turned out for the annual Modesto County Ninja Parade, which once again passed through town entirely undetected.
This is our 4th straight year coming, and we've still never seen a ninja.
According to an arrow scroll delivered straight into the heart of the city clerk, this marked the 30th year that the Modesto area ninjas have stealthily celebrated their heritage.
It's amazing how the ninjas can sneak by undetected on us. The kids love trying to be able to spot them and not being able to.
A record crowd of 3,000 people came out to not see the ninjas.
The ninjas probably were.
The best part was probably when I found their candy in my pocket. The ninjas must have came up behind me like really fast and took all this candy.
Despite its long tradition, only once in 1984 was any evidence of the parade's presence captured on film. And after the event, attendees were informed that the theme of this year's parade had been Shirotori Kuroi Kage.
So this is just my way of illustrating. This is kind of what it feels like to have an open source user. They could go right through the product lifecycle, and you would have no idea. You would have no idea what they were using it for, or if at any point they just got fed up and they couldn't understand how to make it work. And you know, I'm in user experience. That's my profession. So that's kind of a scary thought. It's like, well, when I joined Cluster HQ, it was like, okay, great, show me the users, and then you know I can profile them and understand what makes them tick. And it's like, oh, we don't know who they are. And it's like, oh, okay. So first job, figure out what's going on with the users. See if I can get on to the next slide. So if anybody does have any questions, what do you think that would do?
Informed that the...
No, that's not doing it. Okay.
You going to do another video? Or?
No, I'm just trying to get to the next slide. I'm not quite sure how to do it. We'll just close that one and start it again. Yeah, so please do just shout if you've got any questions at any point. So I thought, well, what I really need is a model, because that just kind of breaks everything down into manageable chunks. Then you can figure out a way to focus your efforts on what you need to do. So I went out looking for a model. I was like, user adoption model, Google, couldn't really find anything. Maybe for sort of internal change management, there were some models for that, and there were some models for marketing as well. So you've probably seen the diffusion of innovations bell curve, where you've got innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. So that's a nice model, but it doesn't really consider the individual's journey. So this is the diffusion of innovations. It's basically looking, so if you're going to try and take on market share, these are the groups that you have to market to. So your innovators are people who are quite happy to they're really enthused by technology, so they love tinkering and hacking, and they don't really care if it's not a finished product. They just think if they can understand the technology behind it, that's what really motivates them. Early adopters are people who are motivated by the business benefits. So basically, if I'm the first person to use this technology, it's going to get me ahead as a business in the services that we can offer. So they're not that interested in the technology; they're more interested in how can I get a jump ahead. Early majority, they're looking for a sort of a tried and tested, safe bet, because they can't afford to kind of undo that change if they make it. So that's the real critical point of the adoption curve in the market. Late majority, they'll take it on if it kind of comes as a de facto standard, and maybe it's bundled with something else. And laggards won't take it unless it's kind of hidden away, like in vegetables and kids' food kind of thing. So yeah, this is a great model, and it's very widely used, but it wasn't kind of what I was after. So I was after, but I want to know about how an individual user goes from, I don't know who the heck you are, to this is a great product, I use it for everything. So I came across this stages of commitment model. It's not specifically for adoption of product, but it's for the adoption of internal change. So it's like change management. So if you have a company and you want to, I don't know, change the way you book your holidays, then this would be a way to model how the people within your company take to that change. And it's quite an interesting model because it covers a few different stages and also some thresholds that you would go through. So this seemed to fit really well with kind of my intuition of how users would take up a new technology product. So you start off with contact, which will be the first stage of user adoption, which is basically, do they recognise your name? Have they heard of you? So if I said Cluster HQ, like when I just said, have you heard of Flocker, and you put your hand up or not? If you put your hand up, maybe you're at the contact stage or maybe somewhere beyond that. Awareness would be, if I picked on someone to say, do you know what Flocker is? That would be, you could give a quick, something to do with stateful containers, something like that. That would be your awareness phase. Then going to understanding, that would be where you're really just kind of digging into it a bit more, understanding what it does do this, it doesn't do that, and so on. Positive perception is where you think, yeah, I understand this tool, but is it really any good to me? So you're trying to understand, how does this fit in with my world? What are the benefits? And do I want to engage any further? So you've got this disposition threshold, where if you can't pique people's interest beyond awareness, then people will just, I don't really understand, I'm confused, and they just drop off. So if you don't have like really clear messaging, or you're not engaging with people in the right way or in the right place, then they can just drop off and you've lost them. Then, so above the positive perception threshold, you've got the action threshold. So at this point where they've hopefully got to the point where they're like, well, yeah, this is an interesting product. Actually, this could be really useful to me. The next step that you want them to is actually to take some action. And that action will be in the form of experimentation, which is the next stage, stage 5. So experimentation is really just like getting your hands on it, having a go, trying it out with a couple of things. Maybe something like an online demo would be a good example of experimentation. Or to take that slightly deeper, you might want to download it or install it on your own systems, maybe just a test system. And then you'll starting to get to the point of adoption where you might say, okay, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a good tool, but there's no way I'm using it in production until I've kicked the tyres, flushed out all the bugs, and basically understood what I'm getting into. So that's the adoption phase. And the threshold above that is the reversibility threshold. So at that point, if they don't like it, if they say, actually, do you know, it doesn't really do what I thought it would do, or I've discovered it's actually unstable, or it doesn't work with another tool that I have, then it's still reversible at that point, so they haven't gone over the reversibility threshold. So what you really want, of course, is for them to continue on and then get into this institutionalisation phase. So that's the phase where, okay, I tried it out on maybe an internal system, like the holiday booking system or something. But now, it's such a great tool, it really is making our lives so much easier, that I want this to be on all our production systems. So at that point, you've gone past the reversibility threshold, it's kind of embedded, and that's the point where you call it institutionalisation. The last phase, which is internalisation, probably relates more to change than it does to user adoption. I couldn't think of a really great analogy of what that would be for user adoption, but it might be something where perhaps you would become an advocate or maybe an open source contributor. But it sort of indicates that you don't just use it, but you really feel that you're a Docker person or something along those lines. So I hope that makes sense. Have you got any questions about that?
Could you just read out? I can't read the captions along the bottom of the.
Yeah. So these are basically your kind of failure points. If you don't succeed in getting the user to the next point, then this is what might happen. So if you're not very good at getting users at the contact level, then people will just be blissfully unaware. So this is unawareness. If you fail at getting people to understand a little bit about what you are, so your place in the market, if you fail that, then people will just be confused. So that says confusion. If you fail to get people to understand your product properly, then people can build up a negative perception. And if you do get positive perception but you don't get the real buy-in, then you end up with inaction. So people will drop out at that point with inaction. This one says rejection, so they've tried it but they didn't like it for whatever reason, so that's rejection. And then termination is, we thought we'd like it, we took it to the next step, we tried it out in some real world scenarios, but actually, for whatever reason, we're not going to take this any further. So that's termination. And there's just a way to flag up what to look out for. So you could potentially study the behaviours that indicate people are doing those things or feeling those things. That's actually an interesting area that I haven't looked at yet, which is to look for signs of those behaviours. So I think I've just explained all this actually. But basically, you've got these stages and these thresholds, and I've given a little summary of which is which. So there you go, animated GIF. That's the stage you want to get to. You want to get people to the end, where they're using the product in production. So that's fine. It's nice to have a model. But how on earth are you going to get any evidence that users are at any particular stage of that adoption cycle? So I had a little think about how that could possibly be done. I mean, obviously there are some activities that you can do to kind of survey people, perhaps, or interview people, and there's kind of outward-reaching things you could maybe do. But I thought I'm sure there's something that I can do with the information that we already have. So let's go and see what data we have. So these are the stages then. I've left the last one off, but we've basically got seven stages there. So data that we have that represents where you might be at those different stages can come from the following things. So when you're going out to events, you're doing it with the purpose of trying to raise brand awareness or raise market awareness. So that's a great way of making sure that you're making contact. So if you know that you're going to 10 events a year or 10 events a month, then you can say we are reaching people, and there are other ways you could probably qualify that to say, well, are we going to the right things, are we reaching the right people? But broadly speaking, if you're out there and you're making some noise, you're going to reach people. Once you have reached them, and they hopefully they're going to come to a website, because that's sort of the first stop to find out more, then these are the places where people are going to be going through these phases. So first of all, oh, I heard that name, let me go and look it up, and then they can make a judgment, well, is this a product that, when I know what it is, do I actually want to do anything with it, or if I just confirm that it's not something I'm interested in? If they are interested, they can then move on to this point of positive perception, and maybe almost experimentation. So you really have to get to the point of download with our product, because it's an open source product, before you can sort of confidently say, yeah, people are now experimenting with that product. And we do have an online demo as well, so we can kind of count that as well as maybe experimentation. So with the website and the docs, different pages are likely to appeal to people at different points of their journey. So there is sort of the home page, you would probably say that's an awareness page. The installation instructions in the docs, you would say, well, that's an experimentation page. People aren't going to just jump straight in there. They're probably reading it because they're genuinely considering whether to use that product, or they are about to use the product. You know, they're actually following the installation instructions. And so if you have something like heat mapping on your website, then you can see, are people clicking on the code samples, which it would indicate that they're copying and pasting into the terminal. You know, what's the drop-off down the page? Because Google Analytics will give you a kind of a per page data, but combine that with the heat maps and you can start to see, oh, okay, maybe people are getting lost on this section, maybe we need to look at rewording that. If you've got a multi-page installation, are people going from one page to the next page? And you can start to get a feel for what people are actually doing. So we've also got GitHub, so particularly with groups like innovators, they're the people who are more interested in technology. So if we see that they're going to GitHub, then we can understand that maybe they are more interested in actually what's going on under the hood. Maybe they're thinking about contributing, maybe they're thinking about branching, sort of forking it or doing something like that. Our blog fits in there as well. Obviously downloads is a really strong number that we can look at for experimentation. If we could get data on third-party blogs, or if we could maybe measure how many people are talking about us in the market, so you can get tools to analyse other people, you know, mentions in Twitter and other networks, you know, Hacker News and things like that. If you get into this point here, then hopefully you're going to get some customers who actually will make themselves known, and they're not going to be the sort of invisible man anymore. So if you do have, I mean, we do know of people who are actively trying to integrate our product into their products and do various things like that. And so we know that those are users that genuinely exist and they're genuinely doing something, but obviously they're self-selecting to come to us to tell us that. And there could be users out there who aren't doing that. So here's an example of some analysis that I've done on the Flocker website. So the website's great because you get a lot of hard data on the website. So we probably get somewhere between 40 and 50,000 hits a month. And so what I've been doing for this analysis is going to Google Analytics. So this is just kind of an example of how you can use data to feed into this model. Go into Google Analytics, take the top 50 pages of the docs and the website, categorise each one and say, do I consider that the user would be at the experimentation stage or the understanding stage? And so give each one a category, then take all the numbers of hits for those particular categories. So let's say you had 6 pages that were at the experimentation stage, and you count up all the hits for those 6 pages. Excuse me. And just track it over time. So this is from the Flocker website, or I should say the Cluster HQ website, from June when we did our 1.0 launch to October, and you can see that we've got some kind of interesting patterns going on here. it kind of looks fairly flat, but once you start to look into it, there's some interesting things going on. So awareness was really high in June because we did a huge amount of marketing. We did a 1.0 launch. We went to DockerCon. We had a stand at DockerCon. We got up on stage and did a demo, and so we had a really strong kind of marketing activity. Not something that you could really do every month, but what we saw was a lot of people, interested. So that's dropped off over time because we haven't been doing that level of activity over the last 6 months. But what we have seen is, understanding, which is the next step, is actually starting to go up a little bit. So you're thinking, well, I wonder if that represents the same users now kind of moving along. I mean, you would hope it would happen quicker than in a month, but as a cohort of users, it's kind of an interesting thing to look at. What I was finding really interesting actually was the fact that these graphs all take opposite, so here particularly, they all take opposite angles. So as positive perception's going down, the next stage is going up. As this one is going down, this stage is going up, which kind of, it's a hypothesis. You start to build a hypothesis that, these are the people who are moving from one stage to another. And as we've made our product more, so we've got a plug-in for Docker now, and this is probably what's explaining this increase in people going to the installation pages, because the product's now becoming a more usable product. So it's kind of interesting. You can do this with other data as well, using kind of similar methods. If you can figure out this data point represents this kind of behaviour, then you can start to build up a picture of what's going on. And hopefully, when you start to then act on that information, you can start to see the results of what you've done. Okay, so how to use this for planning? Mashup. I originally did these slides internally for my business because nobody believed me that McBusted was a thing. So I was like, no, I have to get McBusted in, and there's a great description on Wikipedia, which I did make a note of. So let me just see if I can get it for you because it's pretty nice. Which is, this is probably going to flip me to the wrong slide now. McBusted are an English pop rock supergroup composed of members from bands McFly and McBusted. McFly and Busted, yes, so McBusted. Anyway, all I'm saying is that I've basically put those two models together. So we've got, that's not worked on it. Yeah. So combining these two models. So it's useful to think of individual users' path through this curve. But when you start to think, well, actually, we've got these innovators, early adopters, early majority. Probably we don't have anyone yet from these ones, but we'll have to care about that at some point. They're all going to have quite different experiences going through this curve, because innovators, being much more technically driven, are not going to be looking for things like referenceable other customers, like use cases. They're not going to be looking for paid support. They're not going to be looking, for us to be exhibiting at trade shows. So actually, the things we need to do support them are different for the different user groups, for the different market segments. So I'll put these two together to make, there we go. I don't know if you can see that very well, it went a bit dark at the top. But basically, each one of these curves where you've got innovators adopting, then early adopters going through the adoption curves, and the early majority, and they're kind of, this is spaced out as per the bell curve on the other one. And you can see that at any given point in time, you're going to have several different cohorts, all at different points. And so we start to build this idea of activities that are really important to do now, and activities that will be important to do in a little bit more time. So now it's really important, for example, to make sure that people have access to our engineers, because they're the people that are going to be motivated by technology and wanting to tinker with it and do that kind of thing. So they're going to want to see hackathons, and they're going to be going to kind of technology-specific events. They're going to be reading technology-specific blogs, So those are the places that we should be putting effort in now. But we need to bear in mind that once, let's say we are at this red line, early majority are just at the contact stage. So we need to be promoting our product and our company in places where that early majority are going to see us, because they might not see us at DockerCon. They might not. Depends how early they are as an early majority. But maybe they would see us at some kind of, cloud event. So you've got to think about actually what's working now to get new users and to support new users. So it's not necessarily going to work as we start to progress down here, so we'll have to bear in mind that information that we're gathering will help us to understand what kind of support we need to give as we go through here. So what can we actually do? Or what does this look like for our different cohorts? So the innovators, the shorthand way to think of them is they're the techies. So their contact is, but they're probably going to find you, to be honest, because their feelers are out over there. They're just, they're all over it. They're all over new technology. As long as you're somewhere and doing something, they'll probably just find you. Awareness. So this could be I've actually seen this when I've been doing user testing, and I said, show me how you would find out about what Flocker does. And they say, I would go to a third-party blog. And you're thinking, I was hoping you would go to our website. That's fine, but it tells you something, that actually they don't want to hear the marketing material, because they instantly think it's going to be rubbish, they're going to lie to me. So I'd much rather go and either see someone using it, or read some third-party blog from someone I trust, or go to GitHub and say, well, when was the last activity on this project? Is it even a going thing, or is it just someone's pet project that they've given up on? So, it hasn't moved on, sorry, apologies. That's what I'm talking about. So it's important. It's not important. Well, it is important, but it's interesting. I just find it interesting that we can use models to help us focus our activity where it's going to make the most difference at this point in time. One interesting thing about innovators is they're not normally, and this is a generalisation, I don't want to put anyone's nose out, but they're not generally the people who are in charge of putting things into production. They might be, because it's, everybody's different, but generally as a group, they're more likely to be tinkering on their own projects. Or to own maybe a startup or a smaller company where they were just the techie, but then they started their own company and they've got the control of what's going to happen. Yes. Early adopters, these are the real kind of visionaries, real business minded, so they're people who are going to be saying, I want to get ahead of the competition and I'm prepared to take a big risk to get there. So these people, they're kind of not perfectionists, but they're really driven by this vision. So it's kind of almost like a disconnect, because they'll see this product and it'll be a really unfinished product and it'll be really rough around the edges, but they'll see the potential in it. They'll see this will give me this business benefit, and then they'll try and make the vision happen. But then they're trying to do that with a product that isn't really finished. So they make actually quite difficult customers because of the fact that what they want, their vision, is so far ahead of really where the product is at the moment. So, but you need them because they will help to show you where the product needs to go, and they may even kind of give you money to try and, we've had experience of customers that they'll give you some money to try and help you get things underway and get things going in the direction that they want. They might pay for support, for example. So they really need to kind of pattern match what your product is with the solution that they have in mind. So they're out there looking for solutions, and they need I mean, they're quite insightful, but it's helpful to tell them what the benefits are, and they will want to go almost immediately they will go very, very quickly through validation, and then they'll want to get to proof of concept almost as quickly as they possibly can, because time is really, really important for these people. If they are too slow to do this, then they will lose their edge. So this is a really it's really different for the techies, where the pleasure is in understanding the technology and kind of playing around with it. Also, as a kind of psychographic group, it's interesting to note that they're
Sorry.
it's all right. They tend to have a lot more resource at their disposal, so they're typically high-level people within the company. They've got quite a decent budget and they can afford to absorb the risk that comes along with it, which the next group generally isn't. So the early majority is very much pragmatist. It's kind of like, I need to do something to improve, you know, the efficiency of my team or my company, but I don't have the resource to just like try something and then, oh, it didn't work, never mind, I'm off and do something else, I'm going to another company. Or, you know, it's very much tied up with their kind of position in the company and things like that. So from their point of view, they want to make a choice once and make it the right choice. So for them, it's really important for them to have validated other customers who are similar to them, which can be quite a difficult thing to do because nobody wants to be the first one who is the reference customer. So if you're thinking about user experience, then it will be things like making sure that there's use cases on the website, for example, that there's a support package. So maybe I'm talking about customer experience, but for me, it kind of all, the lines are very blurred. So yeah, you really want to be approaching these guys or supporting these guys in a really different kind of way. So it's useful to try and, if you can understand what kinds of customers are coming to you and at what stage they're at, then you don't have to try and provide support for all of these groups at all of the stages all at once. So the benefit of using the model is that you can say, these people at these stages, these people at these stages, and the next stages that are coming for this. But you don't have to necessarily build use cases straight away. Case studies straight away. You can maybe just do that at a certain point when you see it's needed. So the late majority, these are the kinds of people who, you know, they want to use Oracle, they want to use Windows. They're really kind of risk averse. In fact, they're not really even interested in having a change because they generally think, what I've got works fine. So what they need for support is probably integration. So you need to get your product integrated. So it's like a very low threshold to actually getting using the product at all. Preferably, maybe it could be bundled with something. So these are the things that you need to be thinking about. So from a customer experience point of view, it might not even be that they're even going to come to your website. It might be that they're going to go through a consultant or a third-party integrator. So you need to think about building up those kinds of channels for your product. We're miles away from this, but laggards, they would really, really rather not. These are people who don't have mobile phones and things like this. So it's kind of like they would never want your product. You can only make them have it if it was literally like a chip in a computer. So I'm not selling you, like a Intel processor. It's just in the computer and you have to have it. So that's kind of the only way you can sell to these people. So probably all these stages, although it's possibly interesting, it's not really something that you're going to have to deal with. Okay, so actions-wise, let's just take as a quick example. This is maybe where we're at as a company. So we've got innovators. They're somewhere between these stages. Early adopters are less. They're just in the first couple. Early majority might have heard of us, probably haven't. So if we want to start building up that cohort's engagement, then we need to be thinking about, okay, maybe we don't have to be putting together case studies for them or getting reference clients just yet, but we should probably be thinking about doing it quite soon. And also thinking about going out to some different events, because we go out to a lot of techie events, but we don't tend to go out to sort of cloud storage world or whatever. It's a little bit enterprisey for us at the moment, but we'll have to do it soon. Okay, so just for example, practical things we could do for the innovators. Just make sure that the technical information's there and it's available. Make sure that we're giving them access to our engineers, so we have an IRC channel. We're going to have a live chat soon. We'll see if that works out. It might not work out, but yeah, our engineers go out and they fly the flag and they talk at conferences and they go to hackathons. So, you know, we're really trying to make sure that if people want to engage at that level and technical level, that they can. So these are the activities that we have to think about. Early adopters. So they're not so interested in the technology, but things like calling out the product vision, maybe sharing product roadmap, things like that. So they can see where we're going. Also, the kinds of people they want to talk to is not generally engineers. It's like project managers or product owners or CEOs. Depends on how big your company is and what the structure is. But they want to talk to somebody who can make things happen for them. Early majority. So we might want to be going to mainstream events just to get the name out there a little bit more. We might want to start thinking about getting third-party integrators more involved, so that they can then recommend Flocker, because they will be sort of the trusted counsel of this group. And then we also need to start thinking about support and case studies and things like that. So, oh look, it's in. So thank you very much for coming and listening to that. I hope it was interesting to me to kind of try and come up with this model, and I couldn't find anything already out there. So if anybody does know of a model that I've just completely missed, please tell me, but not in front of everyone. If anyone thinks it might be useful or applicable to them, then I've got rooms to hear that. So let me know or come and talk to me. But yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Got like 5 minutes for questions, and then 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how many there are, and then we can get some more drinks and then go to the next one. So,
yeah.
One thing missing from your real data was the number of users. There's percentages, wasn't it, on the bars? So I was wondering, I guess that has to do with those little drop-offs on the second model you showed, like where people are kind of changing their minds and like going away from it. I wondered if you like thought about ways to try and deal with that, or you know what you'd done to consider that.
It's a really good insight. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think that is exactly why you want to do the modelling, is to kind of see what's going on. I deliberately put up percentages instead of numbers. I do have a graph of numbers on it, but just because I thought I wasn't really sure if it might be sensitive data, so I just put percentages up, even though I know I just told you how many. But yeah, so I just put percentages up. But you're right. I mean, it's quite a crude model at the moment, and it would be nice to think of ways to kind of make that a bit more refined. And I think, you know, the things that I've been trying to do is, like I was saying with the heat mapping, is to say, okay, well, you know, people are reading the installation pages, but if you look at how many people read the installation pages and how many downloads we have, they don't tie up at all. I mean, like, there's far more people reading installation pages than actually, you know, downloading the packages. So it's like, well, I wonder what's going on there. You know, are people just reading to understand, which is probably a valid theory. But yeah, so it raises so many more questions. And yeah, so like most of what I do is trying to reduce the amount of drop-off and make it easier for people to go from one stage to the next stage, whether that's like literally installation page 1 to installation page 2, or wherever the transition. But you know, each person can have so many different routes to getting there. It's really quite a complex job, particularly because everything's just changing so much all the time. Particularly, you know, for us with our product, you know, we're just going crazy with trying to, you know, get to market quickly and get features and you know, make it robust and all the things that it needs to be, because it's such a young product. But yeah, it's really hard to kind of keep on top of all the changes and make sure that someone doesn't change that thing that then ruins the user experience. Like, you got to this page and it said, you know, now do this for installation, and actually it links to the wrong place, but nobody noticed. So yeah, no, that's a very good one. Yeah.
So I was interested at the kind of end of the phase of the adopter. Do you envisage that you actually disengage from that point, or how do you envisage working into that? So I'm thinking you might want to free your engineers up, for example, initial innovation phase, to actually do some work on the product, for example.
So are you asking whether we would always need to provide engineers.
Yeah, well, how do you disengage at the end of that phase? Do you try and maintain it?
I guess it's not really, it's difficult to make it scale. So in the beginning you only have a few customers and they're really, really important. For lots of reasons, obviously customers should always be important. But yeah, I mean, you have more capacity to try and help those customers, because you kind of also have to acknowledge that you probably haven't got all the resources online or support, you haven't got a support desk or something. So it's kind of important at the beginning. But yeah, I think you're right, you can't do that endlessly. So like you had 10,000 customers and everyone's able to access an engineer and you've got 25 engineers, it's not going to scale.
But also, it does seem to line up with my experience of startups.
Good. Oh, that's a good data point.
It's entirely, but I can see, I'm thinking through those phases, thinking where we went.
Yeah, I mean, models are models and real life's messy, but...
Yeah, it is more messy, of course.
But you kind of...
It gives you a framework.
If the approximation's decent, then it's decent enough to be useful. I guess you have to be just aware that you're not deluding yourself by just thinking about the model and not really looking at the data to test your model even. Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask how much kind of cross-pollination you thought there was between your different groups. So your early adopters, your techies that pick something up, and ideally you want them to play around with it, love it, and then evangelize about it to the next group on, and so on and so on. And can you give them kind of tools to help them do that, maybe, or have you thought about that?
That's a really good idea. I think the first part of what you said, I think that is definitely what happens. And there's a really good book that I read about half of, which is called, I think it's called Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore. And it's basically, it talks about these groups and how they interact with each other and how you can successfully get your product from, a few people just love it, to, everybody's using it. And one of the things that he says is that, innovators are a really good kind of source of information and tip-offs to the early adopters. So, it will be innovators are using things and they're kind of, maybe they're blogging about it, or maybe they're working within a company which happens to have an innovator who's interested in so it can be across like a social network or an industry or...
It's just you were kind of saying, okay, the techies, they don't tend to be the ones that make business decisions, which is probably quite true. So can you kind of, presumably if they love a product, they really want to work with that in their professional lives as well as maybe their personal lives where they've been using it. So can you maybe give them materials that they can use to sell to someone? Using this is great.
I forgot that was your second point, and I think that's a really smart idea, and it'd be interesting to have a bit more of a think about for us and for anyone else who's in that position, to think about how that could actually be done. I was talking to Andy earlier about how Docker in particular has had a developer-led adoption curve, and so it's an open source product, and it seems to be more of a trend nowadays that there isn't a middle senior manager just going, right, you're going to use this tool, do it. It tends to be more that it's coming up from developers going, I have this particular problem that I'm trying to solve, or I've been tasked to solve. Let me have a look around, see what there is, do some reading, try out a few little test cases, and then I can maybe present it to the person who, if there's a cost to it, that person is the decision maker and they can sign it off. But it's pretty much they just rubber stamping it. So that seems to be now more commonplace than there's somebody who's just, it's their job to dictate what tooling you use. So I think that's a very, very insightful thing.
So I'm sure we can. If there are any more questions, then Alice will be around.
Yeah, I'm around.
So if you want another drink, thanks to Alice. Sorry.
You're welcome.